Hello, welcome back after a very long hiatus on my part. I will definitely explain a little bit more of that in a couple episodes, but I did record a few while I was still going through my cancer treatments that I just didn't get out in a very timely manner. But hey, this is where we're at. So, yes, this is a Canadian Aces special, which is a band that Scott had, a swing band that he had going on in the 80s, and many, many members in that band. But I was able to get three of them together for a really great podcast interview. And yeah, without further ado, and since this is a podcast about music, we should have a little more of Scott's music. So we're going to kick that off with some Canadian Aces music right here. I hope you enjoy.
Beat me daddy into the bar. He goes blink, a plunk, a blink, plunk, plunk, blink, plunking on the key. A riff, a raff, a riff, a raff, a raff, a riff, a riffing on the key. And when he jams with a bass and guitar, everybody hollers, beat me daddy into the bar. On the key. It goes riff, a rap, a riff, a rap, a riff, a riff, a riffing on the key. And when he jams with a bass and guitar, they holler, oh, beat me daddy into the bar. Come on and beat me daddy into the bar.
Scottish.
Yeah, I know. One of a kind, no question,
Oh.
eh?
Very much. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the Honolulu Heartbreak.
So that was Beat Me Daddy 8 to the Bar by the Canadian Aces, and this is a Canadian Aces podcast special. We have Mitch Lewis, the guitar player. We have Bucky Berger, our drummer, and Terry Wilkins on bass. So, kind of one at a time. How did you first meet Scott? How did the Aces start to form?
I think I was the first victim. I was in a place, a music store downtown, somewhere I frequented. The guy knew me and knew what I did and how I played a little bit. And he said, "There's a guy sitting in the back room. You should really meet. You guys should meet." And so I went back there, and there was Scott boogie woogieing on a synthesizer of some sort. And I remember he said, "Well, you know, we played a little bit there," and he said, "Well, why don't you just come over to the house, and I've got some ideas, you know." So, and he gave me the address. I still remember it, 563 St. Clarence.
Oh, I remember that place.
Wow.
Is
Yeah.
that where you came in? And
That's where I went. Well,
Gee
and I
whiz.
remember because we made an arrangement. I showed up at his place. I knocked on the door. He answered the door, and he went, "Yes." like it's Mitch from the other day, like that. Of course, it was the blind,
That's right. I had the same
Yeah,
experience.
I
thought he was a real
didn't
snob.
know.
Yeah, you did. Because we lived in the same neighborhood, and I'd seen him and met him once, and that would have been around 1977. And I was walking along Roxborough, and I see him walking towards me, and I go, "Hi," and he I said, "Wow, what an arrogant guy."
Yeah,
And then I found out he was blind as a bat, so he didn't know the hell who I was.
and an arrogant guy. No,
And then
no,
we,
he wasn't. No, he
then I
definitely
went,
wasn't.
I don't even know how we made the association, but I ended up at his coach house. So there was
Oh,
me,
yeah, I remember that place.
there was me and Scotty, and there was this insane drummer named Wally Cameron, poor dead Wally, who's not dead. But he did die, and he came back to life, which is another story.
Yeah.
And so we decided we were going to make a trio, with me and Wally and Professor. So I go to Scott's house, and, well, where's Wally? Oh, he'll be here in a half an hour. Okay, he didn't come. Well, he didn't come for like 4 weeks. And finally I said, hey, I don't think that guy's coming. How about we try my buddy Bucky? That's where you came into
Yeah,
the
that's
picture.
right.
And how did the Aces sort of work in terms of like, was it like Scott as band leader, was he kind of bossing stuff, or was it more collective? How did it?
It was pretty.
You know-
it was pretty collective.
Well, yes, I was going to say.
I would call him the
the thing is,
conceptual leader.
yes, because it
Absolutely.
was his idea,
Yeah.
his concept of what we were doing entirely. And we were asked. The reason there was an Ace is that like we always played that material with the Deltoids, some of it.
Yeah. So
But the reason there was an Aces was the fortuitous aspect of the girls being you playing with the Sloth Band with them.
Yeah, I knew
And,
the Honolulu Heartbreakers.
and Sandy Graham asking us if we would put together an exclusively swing band. It says Sandy Graham ran the
Casablanca. and
Casablanca and
Midwich
Midwich Cuckoo, which was called Route 66.
That's
at
right.
That point. Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
We played there
And
in
it-
that other room.
yeah, that's right.
The all-you-can-eat
Casablanca.
room.
That's right.
That's where we played.
Yeah.
The Town and Country.
Yeah, that
That's
was
right,
the
it
very
was.
first Aces gigs.
But
I mean,
Yeah, so
you're
that was-
playing some pretty like older stuff,
Yeah.
and I mean Scott, that was kind of his forte.
Yeah.
Did you guys kind of know that same?
He taught me,
did-
basically.
Yeah.
Well, he turned
Incorrectly, as it turned out.
Okay.
But
yes, yeah,
it worked.
he did capture the charm of it,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, so in those days, it became apparent a week into the Isabella gig that Prof had no idea what to do with balancing books or anything like that, or organizing more gigs or anything really, other than the concept and being really great at doing that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So I took it over, and then when we got to be Aces and Deltoids, it got to be a bit much for me, and Bucky took over the
Yeah.
Aces. And we ran it business wise, and Prof was the figurehead and conceptual.
Yes, and we made sure to get him to the gigs.
Yes.
Oh yeah, exactly. Oh my God.
Oh man!
And he made every one of them.
Yeah. Both our jobs for the two bands was to figure out how to sweet talk the club owner because Scott was late.
Yes. And he'd
So,
come in
but-
in his
and worth it.
tuxedo and riding a bicycle.
Yeah.
He'd be all
And
sweaty.
Tuxedo and green gumboots,
Yeah.
or his carpet slippers or something like that. But as soon as he played,
As soon as he played,
it was all
everything
good.
was good, yeah.
And I never ran into a situation where it said, well, "You guys are pretty good, but you're fired." That never ever happened.
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
absolutely. He was always great.
Yeah.
And then there was the Albert Hall period, which was probably the peak of it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And was quite a few years consecutive.
Yeah.
And we probably play there like 4 times a year.
Yeah.
Easy.
Something like that.
And
Yeah.
6 nights a week and
6 nights a
lined up to
Yeah.
get in.
Yeah.
Well, many long years ago, a fella named Robin Hood, he used to rob the rich most every chance he could. Well, you shouldn't get me wrong because he was no square. With a trusty bow and arrow, he could part your hair. His buddy was Little John, and another was Allendale. With 140 more, together they hit the trail. While they were stamping through the forest to the Blue Ball Ring, Mr. Eaton told them where they should begin. And they took from the rich man, gave it to the poor man. They had a fear for no man, but only for his chick, whose name was Marianne.
Wouldn't believe how many people I still write for. Man, I remember you from Professor Piano, like, you know.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
it's still, you know.
It was ahead of its time too, because maybe 10
Or way
years.
behind.
Or, well, 'cause,
Yeah.
we had like all
Somewhere in
record
between ahead
people
and
who were
behind.
big fans. You know, would come down and they would love the band, but they had no concept of what to do with it.
Nobody
No,
wanted to design us.
no idea.
We weren't even
But you're
trying.
right, and
But
then
it-
swing hit huge in like the 90s. Like,
Yeah, well, the Brian Setzer stuff and all that stuff, you know, I mean, that happened, and, you know, it was 10 years after the fact for us, you know. But we were kind of, I always looked at it like we were playing swing as rock and rollers, which
Yeah.
is what we were.
Well,
Yeah.
we were
pretty
doing,
much.
yeah,
Remember-
we were doing rock and roll versions in a way, just
Remember-
conceptually.
Because we didn't know any better.
Yeah,
Do you
we
remember,
just played it.
You remember that comment? And you
Yeah.
guys aren't jazz. You're entertainment. And we went,
Great.
yeah.
Who said that again?
I forget. It was one
And
of
then
the.
there was some guy.
It was one of the, you know, like
From another band, right?
no. It was a reviewer.
Mm.
Somebody had reviewed us when we played the Forum when it was going round.
Oh yeah.
And that guy reviewed it. Those guys aren't jazz. That's entertainment. And we were like,
Okay.
absolutely fantastic.
So is Cab Calloway.
Yeah. So funny.
And you guys also did some pretty big travel. Like you went to Germany, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
went to Germany
Twice.
a couple
Yeah.
of times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Booked to go again, and then the recession hit.
Is that why we didn't go again?
Yeah,
I can't
yeah, he
remember that.
yeah. But Head of Folk had called you and said, "I can't afford it."
Oh yeah, yeah.
Must have cost a fortune to get us there. I mean,
Oh.
airfare for 9 of us,
It was not a
our
small
own
band.
rooms each in
And
for a month.
Five-star hotel
Yeah,
in Munich, and
Yeah.
it was pretty great. And we could do anything we wanted at that gig.
Well, the manager of the room we played in was a young German guy, and he was very heel clicking German.
Okay, got it.
And this guy was like, he was chewing me out again, saying, you know, you must start at this time and all this stuff. Just at that moment, Herr Folkart, the owner of the hotel, walks out with an entourage and says, Herr Berger, it's so good to see you. Are you having a good time? And remember, you play anytime you want. And you do this.
It
And the
messed
guy's
this
jaw.
guy up so badly.
The guy, you know, he didn't have any relationship with this owner of the hotel.
Okay, yeah.
The manager of the hotel dealt with him, so he was completely flipped out. So we would basically, you know, at the beginning of the week, there wasn't very many people in the place. So we would go on, maybe play for half an hour,
And then wait for
and
it.
then and then maybe not at all
Yeah,
after
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
The weekends were more crowded.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure.
And it was a place where older German guys would bring their
Girlfriends.
girlfriends, you know, and they didn't sell beer there. They only had booze and wine, and people had their own names on bottles and stuff like that.
I remember that guy Hans because the time that we were invited into Traders Vic, I was ahead and we had to kind of push past Hans,
Yeah.
who was like, "What the hell
What
is
is
going
going on here?"
And I remember it's the first German word I ever spoke because I came up to him and I said, "Entschuldigung."
Entschuldigung.
and just walked by him, you know. I mean,
So everyone got nice rooms,
oh yeah, great
small
rooms.
but nice. Now my wife, who's Swiss, helped with the negotiations from Canada because
Yes,
she had the language.
she certainly
So
did.
They were like, bring your wife, and we had a year and a half old, right? So the rooms that they each had individually would have been too small for me and my wife and the kid, and they put us into a room that was about as big as
Palatial,
the
yeah.
this ground floor. That's how big the house
Beautiful
was.
hotel.
It had curtains and windows that were like 18 feet tall.
It was an old
The
hotel.
bathroom had 2 rooms and it was made completely of marble. It was, and also the biggest bed I've ever seen in my life. And that's where we all hung out.
Yes,
we were,
right.
the whole band, 9 people would be sitting on this one bed and lots of room.
And all the food and everything was comped in the hotel.
Yeah. Anyway,
And
that was
it was a great
period for us.
It was.
Yeah.
And they loved the prof.
They totally loved the prof.
And how was traveling with Scott? I mean, I had the pleasure of getting him to some faraway gigs.
Yeah,
well-
it was at a different time period, but Was he? Like,
You had
did you
to be
worry
on
about
him.
losing him and
Well, yeah, I have a distinct memory of going through the Frankfurt airport and having to like hold on to him, basically because he would wander off in that huge airport somewhere. And at one point, I think I let go, and it took me like maybe 10 minutes to find him, but
find him again.
I found him. But you had to basically shepherd him where.
I remember keeping him.
wanted to go.
I remember keeping him occupied on the plane by playing Kings in the Corner card game
Yeah,
with
yeah.
just the two of us, which he loved. It was
He
so
was
funny.
pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
Through it all, he was hilarious. You know, all the
Absolutely.
different periods.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's funny, you know, like I
kept
mean,
us in
for
stitches.
how being blind and whatnot like that, a lot of things could have been really stressful for him. And in fact, when you think about it,
He
he,
did pretty
maintained a
good.
pretty
He did.
cool demeanor
Yeah.
for 99% of it. Every
I
once in a
think
while, you'd see him
absolutely.
get a little.
Did you ever go
a
to the
little
movies
gnarly.
with him?
To the movies? Oh yeah.
Because he had a
He did do
CNIB
this.
thing.
Is that what he did? He used to cover one eye or something when he went to the movies.
Well, he would sit up front,
It's sit-
and
yeah,
you would
is it-
sit back like where normal,
Yeah.
where you would normally. But if you went with him, you got in for free.
Because he was blind,
Yeah.
and you were the handler.
Yeah,
I never knew that.
yeah. I went
Yeah.
to see a couple of movies with him.
I went to see a couple of movies with him too. I get a stiff neck watching the movies.
Well, I didn't sit there. He said, "No, you don't have to sit there." Sit
Oh, I
more."
wanted to sit with him though. It was just to listen to his commentary. It was hilarious.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Of course, yeah. He was very witty too. I mean, he was
Oh
fast.
man, really.
His
witty.
stage banter could be hilarious.
Oh.
And we would be cracking up like we couldn't concentrate because we were laughing so hard.
That's true.
yeah, he was very witty. I mean, his brain was on a different level.
Yeah, well, he was
he
he
was.
was a brilliant guy. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
erudite. You could talk to him about anything. Like somebody'd come up and
Yeah.
start, and I'd be going, and he'd know what
He was always reading.
So yeah, so
Did you
informed
ever
about
read-
almost everything, like a real renaissance.
Yeah,
Did you ever
absolutely.
read Robertson Davies?
I did not know.
Do you know anything about Robertson
I know
Davies?
the name.
Okay, so Robertson Davies wrote pretty much the penultimate Canadian novels.
Yeah.
But it was all based around old Anglican Canada. It was set in like whatever, in the early
Yeah.
1900s or whatever. And everyone in it was white and Anglican. And this is Prof's background. That's where he came from, that kind of people.
Appleby College.
But his death was a classic Robertson Davies plot.
Yeah,
It was his favorite author too.
He was his favorite author too.
He
yeah.
used to talk about.
But he was like born into that culture. That's where he came from. He used to tell us about going to school in Oakville at a private school, and when he was taking piano lessons, the piano teacher was such a hard ass that if Scott made a mistake, he would reach up and take a trophy, like a sports trophy or something that was on top of the piano, and he'd whack Scotty on the head with it. And he said after a few years, the thing was dented. From him getting
I never heard that
whacked
one.
in the head.
That's insane. That's
Scott told me that story, and he said eventually his mom started teaching him because this guy was so abusive.
A crazy guy.
oh, that's funny.
Yeah, I always find, when like knowing Scott and then knowing, especially where he started from, like the Hawkins, Hawkins band and playing with Aerosmith. It's not surprising he didn't last in either of those situations. He just
Yeah.
didn't, like when you think of, what is a rock star? Scott does not
Did
fit
No.
that mold in
no.
my mind.
Did he ever tell you the story of playing in Honolulu with Aerosmith?
Yeah, I think this is the picture that
Yeah.
I've referred to.
Yeah.
Oh, so you know the
Oh,
story.
I do, but
photo.
please
Okay.
share.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
I'll never forget that story.
Where he sat under the piano.
Well, yes. He went the first night they play, and they have him set up with like a grand piano up front, in front of the amps and everything like that. And they're all
White
dressed.
Steinway.
Yeah.
Giant white.
And they're all
monitors.
dressed, like rock stars and everything. It's an outdoor stadium
yeah.
in Honolulu, and Scott's there with shorts and Hawaiian shirt, right?
And red afro.
Yeah. So he's there, and the first note from the guitar amps were like, he basically he hid under the
Under the
piano
piano.
with this blocking his ears
Yeah.
for the whole show.
That's the photograph.
Yeah.
And then the second night, they set him up behind the amps and stuff, and he was cool.
But what was weird was that, was it called Toys in the Attic?
Yes.
One of the most famous, right? Peter Goddard wrote a review of it, and Scott was on it, and Scotty got the best part of the review.
I
Even
read-
though he was just like a sideman, right?
Yeah.
That
well,
must have been something. And I know they probably wanted him to play,
Oh, they did.
you know. And he could have played on.
Who's next?
Well, no, I wasn't going to say that. The Van Morrison first album, but they couldn't find him.
Yeah.
Couldn't find
And
him.
then they wanted him
He
to
was
play on
walking-
Who's Next by the Who.
He was
said, "Oh, I
he
don't
was
wanna play
he
that."
was he was
I
doing
didn't know
acid.
that one.
He did acid, and he was walking around in Toronto somewhere, you know, in a pair of shorts, and they just couldn't find him. So, but I never knew about Who's Next.
Yeah.
He was
gonna
going to
play on
do. He's going to do that too.
Yeah.
I mean, you could tell a million stories about Prof, but the you know, my bank account's full. Like that's a
Oh, yeah.
total
Thank you,
classic.
Kemp.
you
Yeah,
know?
that was
I
always a
remember
Total
that.
classic.
thing.
The bank account's full was just that he got a blind pension because he was blind, and you can't earn over a certain amount or you don't qualify. And he was scrupulously honest, Prof was. And so when that happened, he turned himself in, only to realize that it was going to take him like 9 weeks to get back on the roll when he needed it next week, you know? So he stopped depositing large checks in his account because so that it wouldn't appear to be over the balance that he was allowed to have.
Yeah.
He distributed them. It wasn't, you know, if you averaged out what he was earning, he totally qualified for it. Just didn't look like it in week to
Right.
week. So,
Was that around the time of the Bran Flakes commercial?
well, that's what it was.
Yeah.
We did the
Yes.
Red Flakes commercial, and we had these giant checks.
Giant checks.
I was playing a gig with Scott. We were both sidemen somewhere else, and I did the room search at the end, the idiot check, and I found his wallet. And so his wallet at that time was one of those clear plastic bank book holders, right? That's what he used as a wallet. So I opened it up to see, you know, whose it was. And so I find his ID and I find all these checks. And I say, Scott, why aren't you cashing these? Like these are we had to get actor permits. They're going to be difficult to get reissued, like the stale dated ones. Why aren't you putting these in your bank account? And he says, my bank account's full. And I'm like,
Did he ever deposit them, I wonder?
yeah, oh, I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
You know,
Probably not.
Maybe not. Yeah, yeah. Might have given it up as a bad job, and you know, like
That's
hard to
possible.
say.
That's
but
possible.
you know, my bank account's full. I'm just like trying to wrap my head around that. What does it
I
mean?
remember we all did.
And he also had a lot of very young girlfriends over the years. They were all like 30 years younger than him.
That's right.
There was Shirley, and what was the blonde one named?
Julia.
Julia.
Yeah, Julia still stay in touch with him, and Shirley was at his memorial.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, he had good taste because.
Always.
Yeah, I mean, Cindy was cute as a button, and Julia. I was in love with Julia in high school. You know,
Really?
everybody was.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah. I
and
think
he
when I
just
started looking after him, I think you particularly, but it was a common thread. Like, how does Scott always get people to look after him?
Yeah, yeah.
Especially young women, and I know that I fit that. We'd never dated, but
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure he would have been open to the idea.
Yeah.
So, what was the time when he went to the mental institution here in Toronto, where because he kind of disappeared?
Many times
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
many times he would
So was
he
that
would
during
just
the Aces?
yeah
In the 80s.
Before
Aces
before
and
the
Deltoids.
Aces too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
through the Aces.
yeah, and before we knew him.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. He
Oh,
would
really?
check him.
I-
He'd
Yeah.
check himself in.
Oh,
He
I
would
thought
check
it was
himself
just
in.
No,
one
it was
long stint.
I'd
No.
say
No,
he
no.
did it many times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Usually it was about a week or two, and if I couldn't get a response from Prof,
boy.
I would phone them. I would
And I
phone
went-
and I'd
yeah,
say,
I
I
went
know
to visit
you
him
can't
once.
tell me
Yeah,
this.
I think we
went together.
We went
Yeah.
to see
And
him.
he,
Yeah.
and he would walk up the hall, and he was so drugged out that
Yeah.
he would slide his feet.
The Thorazine shuffle, he called it.
The Thorazine shuffle.
Yeah, that's what he called
So
it.
even in his insane moments, he could be really
And
funny.
he'd sit and he'd play piano for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, it got to the point at what do you call it?
The Clark.
The Clark.
It was
yeah.
the Clark
It
at
got
that time, yeah.
it got to the point where I would phone there and I would say, I know you can't give me this information, but I would like to know if George Scott Cushney is safe. So if he's not with you, you can probably tell me that, right? So, and the woman would say, yeah, I can't tell you anything, which would mean that he was there. So I'd know he was safe, right? Eventually it got to the point she said, is this Mitch? You know, because it happened over the course of that middle period when we were really busy. It would stress him. He would
Yeah, he could.
he would
stress
stay
out.
up all night.
Yeah,
He would go a couple of days without sleep, and
that's
he
right.
would have an episode. He'd get this kind of sweaty look in his
Yeah.
eyes, and I knew. I used to hire Hawk Walsh, and I'd say, Hawk, I'll give you $50 a night to sit at home. If Scott screws up, and I think he might, I'll call you, and you come and you do the gig, and I'll pay you for the gig. If not, I'll give you $50.
remember we
to-
got
to
Ken
sit
Whitney
there.
one night.
So I was just asking, like, so you could actually see that maybe that the stress was building. You could kind of tell that
You could
there
tell
may
that
be
you
a
could
visit
tell.
coming.
Something was,
He
something
got
was up.
vague and
Yeah.
Well, I remember playing at Albert's
He'd get a
Hall.
little weird on the
Yeah.
piano. He'd start
Well, I remember
forgetting where he was and stuff like that.
but I can remember him at the piano laughing like insanely,
Hysterically, yeah.
hysterically laughing, and turning around in the next chorus of the song, he's crying.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we, it's just,
It
after
was,
after
it
the
was
set.
classic manic depressive.
Yeah,
Why are you wearing a New York Yankees hat?
Because I love this hat.
You know, but they
It's a really nice. I don't care.
Yes,
it's
they did.
it's a hat. I don't know which end of a baseball bat to blow through, and I don't care.
I love go sports, get the thing to the other side of the thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
That's about it.
Okay, that's what Bradley used to say. Go local sports team.
oh, that's funny.
So at what point was that becoming a problem? So I mean, because you kind of always had a time where you lost Scott, but
It got
when did things start to
towards the end of the '80s. It got to the point where we had run into a really nice connection where we were playing quite a few Jewish weddings, and we actually at Sherry Shemoyim, which is a big synagogue up north Bathurst or somewhere like that. I can't remember. We did one gig like that. We had 3 more coming up, and 2 weeks before the next one, Prof bailed. And I thought, okay, this is not good. You can't be, because when it's that large an amount of money, you would take a deposit. And I was having to refund deposits to these people, and they didn't want the money back. They wanted the
It's a
the
wedding.
gig.
Yeah, for sure.
I canceled the next few, and that was that. And then I recommended him for Bradley and the Bouncers, years later. As a sideman, the pressure's off,
As it turned out, as a sideman, the pressure was on.
Well, that's it. I mean, we've been at it 15 years by then. He wasn't always like that.
No.
But he got to the point where, when he got older, I mean, he would forget where he was in a song. He'd forget what song it was and play the wrong bridge, which was, I used to say, I'm the one that actually got really pissed off at him about it, because in all those situations, I'm playing rhythm guitar, so the right chords are happening, including for his solo. But when I went to take mine, he would dump me. He would forget where he was. He'd actually be playing away, and he'd turn to Terry and say, "What song are we playing?"
Yeah.
And I actually put my guitar down at one point and just walked off stage. I
Yeah.
was so pissed, But it
That
wasn't
was
his
sad.
wasn't his fault. It was
Yeah.
just he was getting older, and
Yeah.
I didn't leave any room for that.
Hey, hey, hey. Bye, 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 bye.
He had a very, very strong left hand.
Yeah, That's the great thing about him. He's a great piano player, and piano player, I mean, you know, as in not just a keyboard player or something like that. He had, you know,
Oh, yeah.
this thing going on. That's what, you know, you had to learn his left hand. I had to learn to be that middle.
Yeah.
I had to learn to play in between his hands.
Yeah, that's
you know,
very
in
true.
terms of where my notes were and how many of them there were. And you know, I'm not strumming whole 6-note chords, playing little 3-note chords and stuff like that.
Well, he got us about 75% into the style.
Yeah.
And then we had to refine it from there.
Yeah, and he didn't come along with us, and that's what caused the rift
Yeah.
with you know Bradley
Yeah.
later on. Is Bradley basically Scott viewed himself as fired from that band. He wasn't fired at all. He was asked to go home. He was given the charts, asked to go home and learn
Learn the songs.
the tunes the way we play them.
Yeah.
You tell him, he would play it once. By the time you got to the bridge again, he'd forgotten. You know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I remember John Sheard, and John Sheard is a really well-known, respected piano player and reveres Scott. So John, we hired John actually to replace Scott for a couple of gigs. And John said, you know, what's the deal? I feel really bad about this. And we told him, and he said, well, I'm going to go to Profs. And he grabbed all the charts, and he went and, you know, visited Scott, phoned him up, said, can I come and visit? And, you know, we'll go through these things himself, because he thought the problem was that Scott couldn't read them, couldn't see them, you know. And he says, we sat there and we had tons of tea and we talked for about 2 hours. And eventually he said, John Sheard said to him, he said, so do you want to look at these tunes? And Scott says, I've been playing those tunes since they were in diapers. I play them this way. Tossed the charts off, and that was that. So he never came back to that band because he refused to learn what we were doing, you know.
But he was also right at that time, he was kind of out of it.
Yeah, a little bit. He was a
would
little
turn
bit
up
out
at the
there.
Reservoir Lounge to play. And
Yeah,
It
he
wasn't
was
even
having-
his night.
That's the thing. Sometimes with his manic depressive, sometimes it would be that sweaty grin, and you'd see it, and you could almost set your watch by he was going to go to the Clark tomorrow.
yeah,
you know.
that-
And then other times it wouldn't get quite that bad, so he wouldn't go into the Clark, and then there would be like a 2 or 3 week stretch where he was kind of not.
Quite there.
Yeah, not quite there. You'd have to, you know. And I would pick him up for the gig every Wednesday and stuff like that. I would drive him.
Then he'd show up with his trombone
Yeah,
places.
yeah, yeah. That was not necessarily a good sign.
No, that was a sign, really.
Yeah.
I saw him. Oh, Prof's here. He's got a trombone. That's all he wanted to do was play trombone.
Yeah.
He wanted to play piano. He didn't want to do anything.
He's probably the most eccentric person I ever met.
Yeah, that you got to know really well anyway. You know? Yeah. Same.
Yeah.
I would say
He
the
was
same.
classically
And worth
eccentric.
every second 10 times over.
Oh yeah.
I know that's the part that I'm trying to. It's gonna be difficult to capture. Is like how, I mean, quirky doesn't quite sum it up. Eccentric, exactly, and yet how still bloody lovable.
Totally lovable.
Yeah.
In
Well,
those
a
moments
really,
still, like,
a really good friend too.
Yeah.
You know, like Scott was notoriously cheap in a lot of ways. He really,
Oh, yeah.
really was. But I remember,
With a change in his hand,
yeah,
counting out dimes and nickels.
I remember a Christmas that we played. I think we played the Bamboo, maybe. It was right around Christmas
Oh,
time.
yeah,
It was
we did
It was
play the
our
Bamboo
last.
once.
It was our last gig before Christmas and stuff like that. And it was when I was splitting up with Lynn Ann and having a really hard time and having a hard time financially, working 2 jobs, being a musician and working construction during the day. Only time I ever had a day job, but it was
I
for about a
remember that. I
year.
remember when you did
Yeah,
that,
it was killing me, you know. And money was a real issue for me, you know. So we got our paychecks, and you were distributing, and Scott put his paycheck, endorsed the check, put it in an envelope with a bunch of Smarties, and then just put it with my stuff.
Wow.
Sorry, I'm actually.
That's really
Anyway,
cool.
yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I never knew that. That's
Yeah. There's
Yeah,
never
well, he
been
didn't
anybody
advertise.
like Scotty. That's basically. I've never met anybody like him.
and then when he was at Aerosmith, he would collect drugs from the dressing room and mail them back to himself.
Mail them home.
And he
I never
and
heard
he
that story.
yeah but he would send
My
it
mom
back to
doesn't
himself like pot and coke, but he would only do a tiny amount, and it lasted him for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's, I mean, exactly. Like, it's
It
not
was
like
actually, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just say he didn't shy away from that. Like, to say he, went through the 60s and 70s without doing drugs is not true. But he never, it was never an addict as far as I,
No.
No.
It just, he was,
No.
it'd be like,
He didn't need to be. He was already there.
I'll tell you what, that did contribute to those long stretches where he didn't take himself. And really, what was the harbinger of him having an episode was staying up,
Yeah.
not sleeping, and coke wasn't a good thing for him.
No, it was
You know,
not.
that was not a good thing.
No,
for
it
him.
was bad in so many different
It was
ways.
bad for everybody, but I mean,
Yes, it
in
was bad
particular
for
for him, it would set off one of those cycles.
So speaking of drugs, I'd already known Scott for quite a few years there, and I knew he was a pot smoker, and I started to think about whether smoking pot was affecting my memory. So I was thinking, who do I know who's been smoking pot for a long time now? Oh yeah, Scotty. So I go up to Scott and I say, what I want to ask him is, does he think that smoking pot affected his memory? So I said to him, I started the conversation, Scotty, you've been smoking weed for a long time, right? He goes, yeah. He said, without me saying any more, he said, but I did stop at one point. I said, how come? He said, I thought it was affecting my memory. And I said, well, what happened when you stopped? He goes, I don't remember. That's one of my favorite ever, Scotty stories.
You must have a raft of stories yourself.
I
you know,
definitely
for-
do. Some of them were I mean, at his apartment when it was, it was a pretty divey place, and I came in a couple times, and just talking about how something kind of really seemingly low and awful can still be funny and wonderful. His sink was really full, and I came back like a week later and it was the same, and I'm like, okay, what's up with this? Like, this is not you doing dishes. And he's like, oh yeah, the sink's clogged, but it's two sinks, so if he had a plunger, but it would just push water to the other side.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
And so we are plungering together, and like at one point, dirty water just goes all over me, and we're just plunging together, and he's like, 2 plungers, no waiting. And he starts kind of scatting and riffing
Riffing on it, yeah.
as we're to the beat of us plunging, and oh my god, it was the funniest thing. And to my credit, you gotta appreciate, I just got doused in like the skankiest water possible, and I still took that man out for dinner after that.
Yeah.
After we unclogged that sink. But
That's so funny.
Well,
And it was only later, in the later years, that his domestic thing was a mess.
Yeah, it's
For years
yeah.
he lived, like when he lived on St. Clarence, that place wasn't.
yeah, we
It
used
wasn't
to go over
spotless,
there.
but
It
it
wasn't
was
spotless,
but
but
it was
it wasn't,
Yeah, it was
derelict.
bachelor. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
But he got to the point, and especially down there in that basement apartment in Palmerston, he couldn't see anything.
yeah.
He couldn't see that it was.
Palmerston was the
I would
worst,
clean up.
yeah.
You know, I'd go down there to visit him, whatever, and I'd say, "Hey, want to smoke a joint?" And I'd go to roll a joint, and I would have to clear an area
Yeah.
somewhere to not have detritus that I couldn't
But at
identify
that time, he
in the
didn't
joint.
have
you know.
women in his life.
No, he didn't at that
And I
point.
think that his girlfriends helped him
Yeah.
Probably.
be more stable.
I think
you know.
so.
You know, I came here from Australia in 1971, and with an Aussie band, and so we were absorbing all kind of local music. We just arrived, and one of the bands we used to listen to was a band called Jericho,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
he was the piano player.
Yep.
And I was always thinking,
Danny
wow,
Marks.
that guy's really.
Yeah, Danny Marks was in there.
Yeah, and
And Danny
Bob
Marks was-
Yeomans.
That's one of my
Yeomans.
favorite.
Although actually at that time it was Jake Thomas.
Oh yeah, I have a picture of the version with Yeomans.
Yeah.
That's where Props
Cross
in the Barrel. Yeah,
That is one of the
That's
best
right, I know.
bloody
That's
photos.
hilarious.
It just doesn't kind of sum up.
yeah, totally.
Actually, there's quite a few of photos from that period where he is the comic relief in the photo.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
even
I can
like
think.
Ace's stuff when
Yeah.
he's walking along with, he's got like, I think he's got a little piano or something that he's
Yeah.
carrying, and he's kind of creeping along, and we're all there kind of. I've got a few of those shots.
Yeah.
I remember when we went down to the Epcot Center. There was this big
God,
production
yeah.
that CBC was doing, the opening of the Epcot Center in 1980. So they sent us down, and we pre-recorded all of the tracks that we were going to be playing to. But the director was having a nervous breakdown, and all kinds of crazy stuff was happening. And
Wasn't the director Cindy?
Cindy, I think.
no, she was the producer.
Oh,
right.
that's
The
right.
director.
Right.
Yeah,
He was
and
from
Celine
Disney,
Dion
wasn't he,
was
the
on that
director?
show. She was like 12 years old.
Well, she was 15, but let's
Oh,
15, yeah.
okay. I thought she was. I thought she was younger than that.
No,
'cause she
I
sang
remember
to her
very
mother.
clearly.
She had not had her teeth fixed.
No, and
The shot was her getting onto a little boat, and there's a lake, and they start shooting a scene. So she's 20 feet from the camera, and the boat
Singing
pulls
to her mum.
away,
Yeah, this is Celine Dion. Yeah,
and the,
yeah.
and the boat pulls away, but they never changed the shot.
Yeah,
and
so she's-
finally she's like that tall.
tiny Celine on there.
And you know who else was on that show? 18-year-old Jim Carrey.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Okay.
And
didn't know
we
And Peter Pringle and
Yeah.
Peter Pringle. That's
we
right.
were there for 7 days.
Yeah.
We did nothing for 6 days, and we did our section on the 7th day. So we were just hanging about. And so we would walk around Disney World and Epcot Center and all that. And I remember coming, or I was with either of you, maybe both of you, but we came across our shoot, and they were shooting Jim Carrey, and he's entertaining a group of Disney tourists, Americans. But his humor was pretty obscure, and he's talking about the Russian prime minister and sort of politics stuff, but funny. And all these Americans are like, who the heck is this? They had no clue. And nobody knew at that time that he was going to go on to be
Yeah.
really famous.
But I remember our shoot. They had us set up noon with the sun, and it's in September, so it's still really hot down there. Concrete.
and we're all squinting.
Well, we're squinting except
Except-
for the prof. So you see that, when you saw the show, we're all like, they're staring there. And prof, he's the only one that looked great. And then also that show that we did from Kew Gardens,
Yeah.
Oh,
where they
boy.
made us put
That
on all
drag
this
queen
crazy
outfit.
makeup. If you
Oh,
see,
yeah.
they're still around. I see it on Facebook
Yeah.
sometimes.
Oh, yeah. It's
And we're all like, you especially, you've got rosy red.
Oh,
he's
no.
got cheeks.
We
I
look
know.
like drag
And Prof said, no, none of that for me. And he's the only one who looks.
That looks normal. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And then, of course, Professor Piano and his all-girl orchestra.
Oh, yes.
On
I'd
New
forgotten
Year's
about
Eve.
that.
Oh my God!
Were we all dressed in drag?
Teresa Wilkins,
Yeah.
Bunny Berger,
Yeah.
Michelle Lewis,
Yeah. Judy Golick.
Judy
Judy
Golick,
Golick.
and Prof was Prof.
Yeah.
And then there were, the Heartbreakers were
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
And that
didn't
was,
make
and we
very
pro-
good women.
we did no, but that was
Bucky
the
had
funny
a white
part.
lace dress on. I can always remember hair sticking through
Oh
the white
yeah,
lace.
but
and
I had this.
going, oh man,
had
that's,
this wig.
that's wrong.
It was very rough. I had
And
this
the
wig with
cigar.
the little,
And the
wig with this
cigar.
little thing, like a kind of thing like this. And I'd do a drum solo, I'd do the sing, sing, sing. And then throughout the drum solo, the
wig
wig
is-
turned.
Where was this?
And then it was like Cousin It at the end, right?
Yeah.
But we never got pictures of that.
I know we didn't. I can't believe we
I
didn't.
can't
I bet you they
Nobody
exist,
took a
though. I bet
picture.
you somebody in that audience.
That's what drives me nuts. I know, I cannot find. If you ever talk to somebody who says, "Oh yes, I know somebody who might have a photo of something in their basement," like in the there is no photos of Prof kind of 50s, 60s era, like zero that I can find. Maybe
Interesting.
one like teeny thing, but like the Hawkins era, any of that time,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
no photos. And granted. Okay, yeah, people weren't. It was not today. They're not taking photos all the time, but somebody did,
Yeah,
and it's sitting in their basement right now, and it's collecting dust. And
Yeah,
it's
they're
like,
probably buried under.
Yeah, and
anyone
they-
that's listening to this,
Yes.
and you have ever heard of Ronnie Hawkins, and
Yeah.
anyone your grandparent took photos.
Yeah.
Or Professor
Reach
Piano
out.
and his all-girl orchestra.
Yes, or Professor
I
Piano.
would
with
love
all
to
girl
see a
and-
picture of
Yes.
Oh my God.
that. It was enough to get us canceled in the current state of things. Right?
Yeah, in
Yeah,
the
depending
States
on the
In the
state
current
you're
state of
Yeah.
things, we'd be illegal
Oh
in
yeah,
certain
We
places.
wouldn't be able to
Florida,
play
you
in
wouldn't be able to
Florida.
play.
Florida or Georgia or wherever, you know.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
North Carolina.
Good.
If you were to say to somebody, you know, why his story is worth telling. Yeah, does anything kind of spark or come to mind? When you
I
hear-
mean, I think it was worth telling just because he was one of the most unusual humans I ever met, who was also extraordinarily talented
Yeah,
when
absolutely.
he wasn't crazy.
Yeah,
Basically.
that's just about exactly what I was going to say. is
Yeah,
it was,
me
I
too.
mean, he was so worth knowing as a friend.
Yeah.
He was so worth knowing because he was so eccentric, and you just like, you know, and he was a brilliant
He could be
piano
so
player.
funny
He could
on
be,
stage.
yeah, and he could be
So
he
witty.
could be amazing
Yeah.
on the piano too. There's things like that.
And
that,
an amazing
that Epcot Center thing. Like if you listen to that his piano solo in that, it's just like, holy crap!
Yeah, he would
I mean,
come
I
up
can't
with-
think anybody
yeah.
that could do that now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's-
No,
You know?
absolutely.
and his own style too. He had this funny way of playing, and it was probably because he had training, but from Mr. Abuse, and then his mother. So I mean, piano technique is very much, you know, like with your fingers slightly curved and that kind of stuff. His fingers appeared to flap when he played. I don't know if you ever noticed that, but they really did. Like,
I don't think
Kind
I've
of
ever.
do it.
I even noticed.
oh
that.
man, I saw.
Yeah, no, I
used to
can
stand.
picture that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just, you know, it was unconventional, and you know, I can remember my first couple of gigs with him. It's just him and me, and you know, he's cracking off to me while singing the song and soloing around it while playing the bass, and I'm just, you know, it's all I can do to strum the chords, you know. And I'm like, holy shit, who is this guy?
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it was a blessing to know him and to work
Oh
with him.
yeah.
We all learned a
Absolutely.
lot.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
You know, he turned us on to so much
Well, he got
so
us.
great music.
He got us across the bridge out of rock and roll.
Yeah. We used to sit down and work out chord changes, and you would actually work them all out. Prof, you could play the song for him once, and he would be able to more or less play it, like almost immediately.
But his own version.
Then he was, yeah, but then he was too lazy to move forward and actually learn the rest of it. Like, I mean, really, it was.
Yeah, he made it
laziness.
in his mind. He
Yeah.
just made it work, and it was
That was
it
it.
was great. But it also made the sound of the Aces.
Yes, it
and
did.
you playing
Yeah.
his bass line
Yeah.
with it, and you doing, you know, that.
Yeah, it really did.
The Aces. When I see those old things, I thought, you know, this is
Yeah.
pretty damn good. The
Yeah.
vocals and
I know.
everything. You know, people really like that band.
Yeah.
If it been another era,
Yeah.
you know, and Scott had been more stable, because that was another issue with the record companies too. You know,
It's hard to
You know, they-
put a lot of money behind somebody
Yeah.
if they're not going to show. Yeah.
Yeah.
there's that. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. But
I'm sure he wasn't the only
oh,
rock star that was being handled, though, in those days. Jeez.
Yeah.
You know?
yeah. Yeah, and
So-
him for some pretty legit reasons, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
legit reasons, not
Yeah.
because they were heroin addicts, but
Yeah.
you know, medical reasons. It was really fun to talk about him actually and remember,
Yeah.
remember him.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Really good.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh well.
He was a lovely man.
Yeah,
you know,
he
he
certainly
really
was.
a good friend, and you know,
Yeah.
a lovely
I think
man.
the saddest thing was watching the whole end of Bradley.
Yeah, that was. I felt bad about
I'm
that.
glad
too.
I
Because it
wasn't
was
there.
sort of really the first time that he really fell down.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Like musically. Up to that point, he'd been in the, you know, at the psychiatric thing and all kind of different things, but he was always strong musically. And that was the first time where
yeah.
he started to lose the plot a little bit.
Yeah, I remember one night he was soloing, and he turned to you and said, "What song are we playing?" And I think you said you wouldn't tell him right away to see
I
what
can't
happened.
remember that.
Yeah, and then there was another one where we all just
Oh,
he was
yeah.
somewhere else and we all just went
And
stopped and let him go and to see what, you know, because at that point we were kind of pissed off at him and thinking it was lazy.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that. There was something, you know.
Well, it was a combination
Yeah.
of laziness and obstinacy.
Yeah.
And he's
yeah.
a Taurus and a stubborn dude.
Yeah.
Like when it came down to it, if he was in the stubborn headspace,
Yep.
he was immovable.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
It was like he was made of rock.
Yes, he apologized to me once for his obstinacy, and I was like, "Oh, you noticed you did that? Like, I didn't know if you knew."
Yeah.
He was a
Gosh,
good
no.
man. He was capable of a sincere apology.
Absolutely.
That's a pretty good test
Mm-hmm.
of a person.
I
He
agree.
could do that.
Yeah. No, he was.
He had a real conscience, actually. I have to say that.
Yeah, no, he was a genuinely good person, and he told
yeah.
me. I mean, a lot of the stories he told me, he didn't shy away from anything, and he told me a lot of kind of not negative things that he saw or was a part of to some degree, and it bothered him, you know, all his life.
Yeah.
And that he would still share those with me, and no, I just
A decent man.
an ethical person. I would.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was around in the 50s, you know, doing stuff, working in the 50s. And I'm sure he saw all kinds of crazy shit back then, too, going into the 60s.
Yeah, absolutely, and yeah, it's it's hard for me to even put into words how enriched I feel having him in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we
We all would agree with that.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
Like people always ask me, "Why are you doing this? Why are you taking care of this guy? This must be a lot." I'm like, "Oh, it's a hell of a lot. He's
Yeah,
he's a lot, but
Yeah.
but I wouldn't change it for the world." And I look
Yeah.
back and I don't regret a single second of it. I mean, he was, you know, a bad day with Prof was always still, even at his lowest points, no matter what was going on, I always laughed.
Yes.
I always, you know, we always had a great moment
Yeah.
at some point in whatever was happening.
I remember it, just while I think about it, that Dominion thing, that was the first time I met you, and you had phoned me and asked if I was coming, and I'm like, yeah, I'm coming, and who the hell is this Andrea chick? You know, whatever. And then you wanted that. I remember being really reticent to talk to you and really whatever, because I'd seen Prof. I'd saved him from being taken advantage of so many times. And Maya, his girlfriend, had also done the same. She was fiercely protective of him being taken advantage of. And so was I. So I was like, who the fuck are you? You know?
Yeah.
like you know,
Yeah.
like really not forthcoming in that little interview that we stood outside
Yes, we'll be
the club.
redoing that interview.
Yeah, oh yeah, we should definitely do it, because
It
I
wasn't our best.
you weren't getting much from me because
Yeah.
I didn't know you, and
Yeah.
I was
And that's very
protective.
fair,
I was
yeah.
practive of him,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, as you should be, and as I
Yeah.
certainly.
And as you were
yeah.
too,
Yeah.
if I'd known.
Well, I mean, I think it was pretty an understandable thing. I think a lot of people were like, you know, straight up, "What are you getting out of this?" And I'm like, "Good point. You know, and I am, but it's not. Well, certainly wasn't monetary. And
Yeah.
if
Certainly
anything, yes,
not.
it was a giant money pit. I spent, yes,
Oh yeah, I can
so much money
imagine.
on that man, on so many different ways. But yeah, I don't. Yeah, he's just. Yeah, how do you describe it?
Worth it.
Lovable to a fault.
Yeah.
And I got so sucked in. I was just, you know, this was. Yeah, once I started, there was no going back for me.
Yeah.
He was my.
We
he was
were
my
all
guy.
in the same boat.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much, all of you, for coming and being a part of this. We will be for sure doing more formal interviews as time goes on, but this was
A good start.
This was a
yeah.
great
Yeah,
start.
yeah, it was good. It was, like I say, it was good fun to talk about it.
I'm glad
Really
we got
was.
to do it together too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm hopeful that we can even do a little bit in the documentary. It'd be nice to get people together in some groups to
Yeah.
kind of experience a little.
Yeah, it would be
memories.
fun to get the whole Aces together. Though we actually did it once. Maybe it was a couple of summers
did.
ago.
When Marion was moving out east.
Yeah, we all
That's
got
right.
together and just at Diane.
At Diane's place, yeah.
And just played just for the love of it and to see each other, you know.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
it's great.
That was great, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I will wrap this podcast with the Epcot video that you guys talked about because I haven't, and Cynthia Gregg got it to me. So
The squinting. Let's see the
so,
squinters.
yeah, well, so everyone
Prof
pay
and
attention to see
squinters.
if you see everyone squinting but Prof.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys. That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, from the beautiful Epcot Lagoon, the distinctive song stylings of the Canadian Aces. When there's a shine on your shoes and a melody in your heart, what a singable, happy feeling, what a wonderful way to start. You'll meet the world every day with a doodle-um-dee-die-die. What a wonderful way to watch that old worrying world go by.
Please let me explain. My mere business means you're grand. My mere business again I'll explain. It means you're the fairest in the land. I could say Bella, Bella, or even say heaven to bar. Each language only helps me tell you how grand you are.
Choo-choo, choo-choo, chiboogie, woo-woo. Woo-woo, chiboogie, choo-choo. Choo-choo, chiboogie, take me right back to the track, Jack. Heading for the station with my pack on my back. Tired of transportation in the back of a hack. I love to hear the rhythm of the clickety-clack. Hear the lonesome whistle, see the smoke from the stack. And pal around with democratic fellas named Mac. So take me right back to the track, Jack. Choo-choo, choo-choo, chiboogie, woo-woo. Woo-woo, chiboogie, choo-choo. Choo-choo, chiboogie, take me right back to the track,